The naming of Urbain Grandier as a sorcerer sent a shockwave through the town, but Grandier was no ordinary priest. He was a master of pettifogging, the art of using legal loopholes like a shield. He flooded the courts with petitions, questioning the sanity of the nuns and threatening their confessor, Mignon. He demanded the nuns be locked away and the exorcisms stopped. He played a dangerous game, trying to turn the local judges against the church. For a moment, it worked. The town split in two. Arguments and brawls broke out in the streets. Mignon, exhausted and defeated, withdrew from the convent. Grandier stood in the town square, triumphant, his friends boasting that he was out of the wood, and that nothing and no one could convict him. But the screams from the convent had reached the ears of the Queen of France, so she sent her chaplain to investigate. But it was the king's move that sealed Grandier's fate. Louis XIII wanted the local castles destroyed to prevent rebellions, and he sent M. de Laubardemont to oversee the demolition. Laubardemont arrived in a town on the brink of madness. He heard the cries of the women Grandier had ruined and the stories of the invisible guest in the convent. He reported back to the king and the powerful Cardinal Richelieu. The king, a man of cold justice, granted Laubardemont total power to investigate without appeal. Grandier's pettifogging was now useless against the absolute will of the throne. On December 17, 1633, the investigation began. At first, the town was paralyzed by fear. Laubardemont saw what Grandier and his party were capable of doing. Grandier's party had intimidated the witnesses into silence. Laubardemont had to issue a royal proclamation, speak or face the king's wrath, and so the silence broke. The priests who had retracted their evidence confessed they had been bribed and threatened by Grandier's brother. Then came the women. One confessed to a criminal relationship with the priest, claiming he had offered to make her the princess of magicians. The nuns' testimony was even more chilling. They swore that for 4 months, Grandier had appeared in their locked cells day and night. He stood among them during prayer, tempting them with indecent actions. When they resisted, they were struck by invisible hands. The doctors examined the sisters and found the marks, dark, ugly bruises left by unseen fingers. When the Mother Superior was confronted with Grandier, she identified him instantly, even though she had never met him in the physical world. She had only seen him in the magic of her visions. In total, 60 witnesses stepped forward, accusing the priest of sacrilege, adultery, and crimes committed in the very vestry where the Holy Host was kept. Grandier's family and friends tried to appeal to every possible authority, all to no avail. Laubardemont was relentless. He separated the nuns, interrogating them for days to see if they would contradict each other. They never did. The Bishop of Poitiers arrived and began the great exorcisms. To prove they were not faking, the judges and priests began a 40-day fast and a cycle of prayer. They were looking for the 4 signs of true possession, namely, unknown tongues, revelation of secrets, supernatural strength, and levitation. They found all of them. The Mother Superior began to speak in perfect Latin. When visitors from foreign lands arrived, the horror escalated. A witness who had lived in America spoke to the nuns in a savage tribal dialect. They answered him perfectly. Others questioned them in Turkish, Greek, German, and Italian. The nuns, most of whom were simple daughters of the bourgeoisie, explained complex Greek technical terms that only the most learned scholars understood. When Grandier was forced to exorcise them himself, he was offered the chance to speak to them in Greek. The man of extraordinary talent stood silent and embarrassed. He did not dare. Then the demons began to toy with the spectators. When one witness mentally asked for 5 rose leaves, a nun who was in a different room walked into the garden and brought him exactly 5, laughing that she could see his thoughts. Another priest named M. Chiron whispered a secret sign to a friend. He wanted the nun to find a specific page in a closed book. Sister Clara fell into a violent convulsion, her body twisting indecently on the floor. before crawling to the book and placing her finger exactly on the letter S of the requested prayer. She then looked at the priest and called him by his name, though she had never seen him before, and mockingly offered herself to him. The physical evidence was the most grotesque. During the exorcisms, the nuns' bodies became like lead, so heavy that 10 men could not lift their heads. Then they would become as supple as thin lead, their bodies folding backward until their heads touched their heels. Their arms twisted 3 times at the socket. Their tongues became black, swollen, and covered in pimples, yet they spoke with perfect clarity. The Mother Superior was seen suspended 24 inches in the air, touching nothing. The Superior, who was only 4 feet tall, stretched her legs until they were 7 feet apart, a feat that should have shattered every bone in her hips. The climax of the horror occurred just before the end. A demon named Father Lactance promised a sign of his departure. He claimed he would leave 3 wounds on the Mother Superior's side. Under the watchful eyes of doctors and the king's brother, the nun was stripped and searched. No needles or knives were found. Suddenly she cried out and pressed her hand to her side. When she pulled it away, it was dripping with blood. 3 deep wounds had appeared through her clothes and her whalebone stays, her skin looking like pistol bullet holes. The report was signed. The possession was no longer a rumor. It was a royal fact. The net was closing around Urbane Grandier, and the fire was already being prepared.